In 1999, when people thought they had seen it all in CGI, a film called The Matrix arrived. Right in the very first scene, before you barely settle down in your seat, Trinity jumps and freezes mid-air, and the camera spins around her. The moment was jaw-droppingly cool, and I'll never forget it. Over 20 years later, The Matrix still looks like $1 billion. Believe it or not, this Trinity shot wasn't done with CGI alone. Before they got it right, visual effects supervisor John Gaeta and cinematographer Bill Pope tried old-school methods like gimbals and dollies to pull off the effect. They built a camera dolly that could move around the action super fast, but it kept breaking. They finally settled on using over 100 still cameras, each firing a split second apart. When played back at 24 frames per second, it worked like a flip book. The shots were blended together using visual effects. This effect is called bullet time and will always be synonymous with The Matrix. Though bullet time has been copied a lot since, The Matrix was the first movie to do it right. It wasn't just there to look cool, it fit the story. Even today, when you rewatch the film, the effect still holds up. The bullet time sequences feel like a natural part of the Matrix world, not just a gimmick. I can't say the same thing about other films that have used bullet time. Now let's shift to the color palette. You know it immediately, the green tint that tells you you're in the Matrix. This wasn't subtle even in 1999. The green color gave the Matrix an artificial, almost sickly look. Why green? The Wachowskis wanted the Matrix to feel unappealing, and they felt green was the most unappealing color. Think back to the 90s when CRT monitors had that green glow. Not every DOS prompt was green, but it made sense for the Matrix. Like bullet time, the color added value to the story. There have been other films with green palettes, but none can justify it as The Matrix can. This kind of green was not easy to achieve. The Matrix was shot on Kodak Vision film stock with Panavision Primo lenses. This was before the digital cinema era, which makes the color choices even more impressive. Most of the color work was done during production design. This was before the time of digital intermediates, like the full color grading used in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou a year later. The Matrix is a great example of a film getting the color right on set. If the walls had to be green, it was painted green. The filmmakers took great pains to eliminate as much blue as possible from the Matrix scenes, and that's because blue was used to represent the real world. It helped guide us through the complex story, much like how Christopher Nolan used different color tones to distinguish dream levels in Inception. They made everything in the real world look run down and deteriorated. Unlike the sanitized spaceships you see in sci-fi films, the Nebuchadnezzar looks like a well-used trash can with wires hanging out. They took the trouble to wet down the surfaces to get gleaming highlights on the ship. The cinematography of The Matrix is truly underappreciated. The typical T-stop for the film was T2.8 and T4. However, there are tons of slow motion sequences that were shot at about 300 frames per second with a special Claremont Wilcom 12 camera. These shots had to be lit to an insane T11, sometimes T16, and they had to do that at the flip of a switch, so to speak. To save money in lighting, they used 1,000 PAR cans to light these scenes. The main lighting was often soft to stay away from the wide-angle lenses the Wachowskis preferred to use. There was very little fill light because Bill Pope loved his deep, rich blacks. Most of the film was shot with tungsten lighting, and there were a lot of Kino flows used throughout the film to get that digital look. They used green gels when necessary. I remember at the time the critics were not so enamored with the green look, but over time it has proven to be the right choice for the film. Unfortunately, the success of The Matrix started a terrible trend of blue and green films, and it lasted for most of the decade later. The sound design of The Matrix is incredible. The sound of every punch and kick syncs perfectly with the rhythm of the music, adding energy to the fight scenes. One of the most iconic sound moments comes during the helicopter shootout scene. The loud gunfire and the sound of shell casings hitting the floor makes the scene unforgettable. Even without the visuals, the sound alone tells you something epic is happening. The Wachowskis weren't just setting a new standard for visuals, they redefined what sound design could do in an action movie. It's no wonder the sound editing and mixing won an Academy Award along with the visual effects. And let's not forget the music. The movie's industrial, metal, and electronic soundtrack fits the dystopian world perfectly. Can you imagine The Matrix with any other kind of music? It basically screams counterculture. The Matrix also dives deep, maybe too deep, into philosophical territory. Think of Neo's choice between the red pill and the blue pill. On the surface, it's simple. Choose reality or stay in the illusion. But it taps into one of the film's core themes, the nature of reality. Do we accept the world as it is, or do we question everything? The Wachowskis weren't just creating a visually stunning film, they made a story that makes you think. This was a movie people had to watch at least twice to fully understand. and each time you get more out of it. The questions The Matrix raises are more relevant than ever, and no other film before or since captures the uncertainty of the information age as well as this one does. The Wachowskis borrowed heavily from Hong Kong action cinema like the ones John Woo made, anime like Ghost in a Shell and Akira, and philosophy from books like Simulacra and Simulation by the philosopher Jean Baudrillard. Every time you watch a movie that slows down for no reason except to appear cool, remember The Matrix, where slow motion moments feel integral to the film. The slowing down of time and consciousness is built into the premise. Few films have matched this sense of purpose in their effects. The Matrix was well before its time, and many cool ideas were killed right in the beginning. Switch, played by a woman, was originally supposed to be played by androgynous actors, male in the real world, female in the Matrix. This ties into the trans themes subtly woven into the film, as the Wachowskis were exploring their own gender identities at the time. The fact that the film got made at all is a miracle. The Wachowskis spent 5.5 years refining the script, going through 14 drafts. Executives struggled to picture how the film would look on screen, so they commissioned over 600 storyboards. Once the kids saw the coloring books, they were sold. What's impressive is how the Wachowskis were able to pull from so many different influences and still create something that feels completely unique. They out-Tarantino Tarantino. Think about it. It's easier to relate to the dystopian world of The Matrix than the world in, let's say, The Walking Dead, for example. I consider The Matrix to be the second greatest science fiction film ever made. It truly differentiates between films that claim to be science fiction but are just science fantasy. Just because they use sciencey words doesn't make it science fiction. You need to follow the laws of science and push the imagination further. The Matrix balances so many science fiction ideas in such a seamless manner, it delivers a sense of awe and fear. If you really understand The Matrix, you know it's a horror film. Now that we are collectively obsessed with technology, artificial intelligence, and virtual reality, the movie's warnings about control and illusion have only become more pressing. The idea of questioning reality itself, of wondering if the world around us is even real, resonates big time. You could argue it as a harbinger to what's coming, probably a lot sooner than we imagined. When it was released, The Matrix did feel a bit opaque, maybe trying to cram in too many ideas into one movie. But maybe this is why you can rewatch it again and again and use it as a subject of philosophical study. The editing of the film should get a lot of credit, and rightly so. The Matrix won its 4th Academy Award for its editing. So, why does The Matrix still look like $1 billion? The Wachowskis wanted to make an action movie about ideas, and in that they succeeded. The Matrix is a heady combination of groundbreaking visual effects, philosophical depth, unforgettable sound design, and steadfast direction. The Wachowskis weren't just ahead of their time, they made a film that still feels ahead of our present time. That's the definition of a great science fiction film. Now that you've taken the YouTube red pill, the rabbit hole goes even deeper. Check out this next video and see how far it really goes.